Alright, what's happening, guys? Welcome to another episode of Sensible Investing, the deepest stock market research channel on YouTube. My name is Jesse, and today what I just wanted to do was bring you guys a quick little update in terms of a couple of my stocks that I analyzed on the channel, one of which is Canada Goose, and the other one is Qudian. So I'm sure you guys are quite familiar with this. And the reason that I wanted to bring you guys this update today was really just to give you guys some clarity in regards to what I'm doing, because obviously, as you are aware, there's been quite a bit of drama and noise and etc. about the outbreak of the coronavirus, especially at the rapid pace that it's been spreading through China. Now, you've got some people on one side that are saying, oh, look, this is overblown. It's only, 6,000 people and only 100 dead. And then you've got some people on another side saying, look, the Chinese government is censoring information and it's undercooking the numbers, and really the numbers are a lot more inflated than what they are. It's just that they don't obviously want to create global panic. Now, whether the people on the conservative side or not the conservative side are correct or not, what I wanted to do is I wanted to bring you some facts that I found and what I've done with my Canada Goose and Qudian holdings. And unfortunately, I've decided to close both my positions in the stocks. Canada Goose at a very, very small loss, and unfortunately, Qudian, I took quite a big loss on that. And you guys might be thinking, well, look, this is just panic selling, right? Like, you've effectively panicked, Jesse. You got to keep your cool. You got to look, guys. Based on my research, I believe that I've been very rational and very logical about my decision. And so what I'm going to do next is I'm just going to take you guys through some of the things that I've found and the implications of these, I guess, pieces of information. As you guys can see, this is a train in Beijing, okay? So this is not even in Wuhan. This is Beijing, about 1,000 kilometers away from ground zero and where the outbreak has happened. And as you can see, the train is completely empty, okay? So despite Beijing itself not being in a quarantine city, which this is what it typically looks like, okay? So this was 1 week before the coronavirus outbreak had gone mental. And as you can see, people were out. The streets are packed. All of the shops are open. People are shopping. People are happy. People are spending money, right? Fast forward 1 week later, this looks like a scene from your typical zombie movie, right? It's post-apocalyptic. The streets are empty, right? So this is effectively the same vibrant shopping district, as you can see, only a few short 7 days later, and not a soul is in sight, right? You've got people cooped up and locked up in their apartments. Driving through the main streets is completely empty. And keep in mind, guys, Beijing is about 2.5 times the size of London, okay? So this is the first thing that concerns me, and, we're only at the beginning of the situation, okay? So Canada Goose, right? It's experiential retail. People go out. Some of their stores don't even stock inventory. They just let the people wear it, experience it. Obviously that's not good if people don't even want to leave the house, right? For Qudian, again, it's terrible because if you think about the reasons why people borrow and take loans, okay? They'll be spending, they'll be consuming, they might be traveling, all sorts of reasons, right? So this is fact number one, which is, influenced me to sell. And I can run you through at the end of this video, what my original thesis was and now why it's null and void today. Okay, guys, so factor number one. Now, if we go on to the next slide, I've included a video. So if any of you guys are interested, they're actually interviewing a chap who's stuck in Wuhan in terms of, how bad is the situation? How long is the quarantine going to be? And one of the key things that really stood out for me was the fact that he commented, they are quarantined here until at least March and April, until further notice. Okay, guys? Now, this is just heading into February. So, and keep in mind, okay, Beijing itself is not even under quarantine, yet it looks almost identical to Wuhan in terms of how empty it is on the streets. Okay? So, let's say hypothetically, if, they are quarantined and people don't want to leave the house at least until March or April, then we have to ask ourselves, what that 2 months then means for their numbers, right? And we're talking their next quarter numbers and more importantly, their next year's numbers, okay? So what does that mean for their original guidance and how much do we think they might lower it by? Because if you guys watch my videos, you'll know that I'm a firm advocate of sentiment and expectations is what drives share price, not earnings, because as long as a company's performance is better than expectations, it doesn't matter what they deliver. If it's better than what people expect, it'll go up. And the inverse is true, where if it's worse than they expect, it'll go down, okay? So this gets me thinking, well, 2 months of people not spending, not consuming, not borrowing, what's the actual impact of the numbers? And the short answer to that question is, I'm not really sure, but I'm going to run you through some factors that I took into consideration which influenced me to close my position. Okay, so as you can see over here, guys, this is a footprint of all known Canada Goose stores in China, or partner stores where they resell Canada Goose's stuff, okay? Now, if you track their company's history over the course of the past, say, year, you'll realize that these stores have been popping up exponentially, all right? So China is a major sort of flagship, a major target, okay? A major growth driver for Canada Goose. Now, if you then compare that with the number of outbreaks that people have experienced in China, and keep in mind, this is 28th of January, okay? So when I put up this video, it'll be 3 days later. And you can see that it's effectively made its way across all of China. But if you actually see the heavily hit areas, right? So take a look at the map in terms of where China has a concentration of Canada Goose or Canada Goose resellers, and then you look at the actual concentration of where the virus is, you actually see that some of the most heavy hit areas are where their big stores are, right? We're talking Shanghai, we're talking southern China, we're talking sort of central China, right? This is where the big city and metropolises are and people with money want to spend, okay? So that's the other reason, right? So reason number one, it's a ghost town. Reason number two, quarantine could go for an extended period of time. And even then, in a city that's not quarantined, it looks like a city that's quarantined, okay? And then you've got the geographical spread. So there's a lot of pressure that will be coming onto Canada Goose and Qudian's next quarter and next year numbers. All right, moving on to the next slide. If we have a look at the metrics over here, you'll notice highlighted in red that the Asian numbers, predominantly driven by strength in Japan, but even more so in China, is now accounting for about 25% of their revenue, okay, guys? So this is very, very important, okay? Now, keep in mind that their growth rate last year in China was north of 80%, and baked into their long-term 3-year guidance of at least 20% revenue growth and 25% earnings growth, we have to actually ask ourselves, well, how much of that is baked in terms of the China numbers, all right, guys? Because as you guys will recall, if you've read my report and watched my previous video, a part of the bullish thesis was that the stock will go up on the next earnings call because they will maintain the growth trajectory, proving the market wrong. However, with this black swan event of the coronavirus, I'm not too sure that's the case anymore. All right, guys, so moving on to the next slide. So in summary, this is my expectations. Because Canada Goose's fiscal quarter 3 runs from October till December, I think they're going to have an amazing fiscal quarter 3. I think that they're going to massively beat expectations in terms of revenue and earnings. However, my prediction is that they will downgrade fiscal quarter 4 and also downgrade their overall full guidance for the full year next year, okay? And as a result, if we have a look at what sort of happened in the past to Canada Goose, whenever they've missed expectations, I'm expecting a fall of about 25 to 30%, and depending on how bad things are, it could keep drifting lower, okay? So if you guys will recall this paragraph over here that I wrote in my report, one of the theses that I've had for investing in Canada Goose was obviously the long-term bullish thesis of the China growth story. Now, I think that this is still intact. When the coronavirus whole situation blows over, people will go back to what they were doing, okay? However, how long that'll be, I don't know, okay? But based on the evidence that I'm seeing, I think it's comfortable to say that we can expect people to be in a very risk-averse, homebound mode for the next couple of months at least, okay? And that's sort of my main worry for them. So that's why I've decided to close both of my positions and see what happens on the next quarter call, and also how this coronavirus situation unfolds, okay, guys? And you'll recall that I haven't talked too much about Qudian, okay? And so the reason why is because, I think Qudian is relevant to, not just the retail consumption, but we have to again think about why people borrow money, okay? And if you think back to Qudian's business model, they are largely targeting the people who are underserved in China, okay? Especially in those tier 3 and tier 4 cities. Now, Wuhan is a tier 2 city, but the 18 cities surrounding Wuhan in the Hubei province, they're sort of tier 3, tier 4 cities, and the quarantine is now extended to 56 million people. And this is only day 14 since the coronavirus outbreak, okay? Major tourist destinations, right? Shanghai Disneyland, that's been closed. Malls have been closed. Public spaces has been closed. Karaoke bars, movie theaters, internet cafes, these are all relevant, right, to people who want to borrow and have a good time. So that's obviously going to affect Qudian, okay, guys? And if you have a look at this, they're halting Chinese citizens traveling overseas, right? They're halting these travel groups, okay, for at least a couple of months. Again, borrowing money to travel is another good reason why people want to borrow money. So that's obviously going to affect Qudian. Furthermore, if we have a look at some of the other indicators here, we've got Starbucks closing nearly half of all stores in China, okay, guys? So of 4,000 odd stores, they're closing half. Now, if we think about Starbucks being so spread across China and they're closing half of all stores, then we have to tell ourselves, okay, maybe this thing is a little bit worse than people are saying, and I'm actually leaning more towards the side of the Chinese government is actually censoring how bad the problem is. Otherwise, a major global corporate like Starbucks, why would they close half the stores, okay? Apple, if you have a look at their most recent earnings calls, you'll see that Tim Cook was very, very evasive in terms of his answers about the coronavirus, right? He focused on Wuhan and some of the other regions, but he didn't mention the rest of China, okay? He didn't mention the rest of the suppliers. And so, I think in this instance, because we have a black swan event, I've taken the better safe than sorry approach, and that's the reason why I've decided to close my positions. And look, it's been very, very hard because, as you guys know, I put a lot of hours into researching, especially Canada Goose, 100+ hours. I really like the company, I really like the story and where they're going, but we as investors, we have to set our emotion and our ego aside, no matter how painful it is, and make decisions based on the facts that we have, okay? And so what I'll do, guys, is let me leave you with one final piece of evidence that I found, and it was an article from the Washington Post interviewing an English teacher. Now, albeit this person is based in Wuhan, okay? So keep that in mind. So, they've said, look, we're going to change all of our schools to online learning, and, we expect that this will maintain its course over the long term. I don't know what they mean, right? A few months, half a year, who knows, okay? But again, we have to compare not what the actual people are telling us, but what the people are feeling, okay? And so, if you guys have contacts in Beijing, Shanghai, Hong Kong, southern China, some of the bigger regions, I'd really encourage you to actually reach out to them and have a chat to the people on the ground experiencing this day in, day out. What they're going through, what they're feeling, what they're thinking, okay? And then, whether they're actually going to go back to work, right? And if they are going to back to work, when are they going to? Or how long are they planning to not go to work to avoid contact with other people as much as possible? And then what does that mean for their income and their ability to consume and spend, okay? And this is, again, very important for Qudian, very important for Canada Goose, right? If people don't have income, they won't be able to go out and buy these things, they won't be able to borrow, they won't be able to repay. So these are all of the implications that we have to take into consideration. And so, I've been thinking about this extensively over the last week, and that's why I've decided to close my positions. So a little bit painful, especially taking the loss on Qudian, and especially, seeing about 100 hours of Canada Goose research go down the drain. But again, like I said before, we have to be completely dispassionate and emotionless when we invest and base our decisions on the facts. Okay, guys? So, guys, that's just a quick update from me. Hope you enjoyed the video. And look, the next few videos that I'm going to be releasing, I'm going to be creating a little watch list for the post-coronavirus apocalypse, as there are a few really, really interesting companies that I'm watching that I'm hoping absolutely tank so I can buy more. And one of them is my favorite stock, or one of my favorite stocks in New Zealand, Auckland Airport. So guys, look, I hope you guys don't have too much of a heartache and tears during this coronavirus season. And look, stay safe, stay healthy, and until next time, I'll catch you in the next video. Happy investing.